In today's episode, Waymo starts getting serious about self-driving cars, the 30th anniversary of the Soviets' shuttle, and new Tesla news breaking stuff that just happened. Let's do this. Welcome to the Our Ludicrous Future podcast, episode 10. We're in the double digits this week. I'm Joe Scott from the Answers with Joe YouTube channel, and with me is Tim Dodd.
Hey, it's me, Tim Dodd, the Everyday Astronaut from the Everyday Astronaut Everything. And with us, of course, is Ben.
You know, I'm going to create a Everyday Astronaut Everything page, and that's where I'm going to start posting. Get some free publicity here. What's up, everyone? This is Ben Sullins from Teslanomics.
Howdy, guys. We made it to 10.
Woohoo. Numero 10.
It's really 10.1.
I was just
or 10.5.
10B. We just recorded this, half of this show a few minutes ago, only I recorded my feet with this microphone that's handily, literally down here next to my feet. So I decided it would be better to not have a whole podcast of foot audio coming from my end. And we're really, truly working on making a better sounding podcast each week. So hopefully this is the one, 10. It just took us 10.
Yeah, 10 tries and that's it. But see, Tim, you kind of let it out now. Now we can't mess up because this is our second run here.
So we only got through like 2 news things.
Okay.
So what everybody's going to be hearing is us pretending to be talking about this for the first time. It's like,
I didn't know that.
I did not know that.
So let's start the pretending here, Tim. What do we got for
us?
Actually, I want to say real quick, Tim, I want to give you credit for being a pioneer and giving your feet a voice. It's 2018, and you're like, I'm going to let my feet talk. Put a microphone down there.
Talking. Well, I'm a pretty good dancer. So, I assumed that with I just normally try to let my feet talk, but I thought I'd really let it happen this week.
You're doing a little soft shoe underneath your desk there.
All right. Anyway, moving on. This is not the future at all, but it should have been. That's
our ludicrous past.
It's our ludicrous past this week, guys. It's just this is one of my all-time favorite things that I just had to talk about because it's one of my all-time favorite things. Today is the 30th anniversary. Well, technically, kind of yesterday-ish. Depends on UTC time, all that confusing stuff. But technically today-ish, 30 years ago, the Soviet Union launched their own version of the space shuttle. They built their own space shuttle, and it launched successfully and perfectly and never launched again. And this is the sad tale of it. It was gorgeous. It's called Buran. And it launched on November 15th, 1988 for its one and only flight. And yes, it does look an awful lot like the United States Space Shuttle, and that's no coincidence. They obviously, in 1988, by then the shuttle had been flying for, 7-8 years. And, they clearly knew what the United States Space Shuttle looked like. And they knew the U.S. and NASA had done their homework on the vehicle. So they basically copied the dimensions of it because you can really only supersonic reentry on a body this big. Physics kind of dictates how it will be shaped. And so they basically said, all right, we're just going to do that too. You guys you clearly did your homework there. Looks good. We'll copy that. Kind of like they had that Concorde copy. Like at some point, physics just sort of dictates the shape of things, and
I've been telling my wife that for years now. That's just what happens when you have kids. Physics just dictates the shape of your body. So
yeah, and
completely understand.
There's nothing wrong with that. That's just life,
That's the same thing, sure.
Physics wants to make everything round. Okay, that's what I'm saying. I am round.
I will probably never tell my wife that, but moving on. There's some very big differences, though. You can almost, in some ways, think of the Buran as Space Shuttle 2.0. First off, the Buran didn't focus so much on reusability. They wanted to match the military potential, which they I think in their own minds, overhyped the military potential of the space shuttle. I'm sure they heard, we're going to use this to build space stations and explore space and do all these, fun things. But I'm sure in the back end, they're going, they could drop a 29, ton bomb on us. Look at the size of that payload bay. This thing is a military weapon, and they freaked out and they basically matched it verbatim. But one of the biggest reasons why the space shuttle is so advantageous is it can bring stuff back down from space, potentially including enemy satellites, potentially servicing their own satellites, doing things that you can't do with other space vehicles. So it had a huge capability that is unmatched. But apparently the Soviet Union thought it was worth matching. And so they had to develop, they physically copied kind of the shape of this thing, but they still started from scratch on the design, really. I mean, they had to develop their own thermal protection system, which was slightly different. They had to develop their own, all the software, all the hardware, everything. They still had to do it all just because you have a picture. That's like you being like, I see you saw a picture of a 747 and you built one yourself. Not impressive. It's like, no, dude, what? If you built a working 747 just by looking at one, touche. You did the work still, Mm-hmm. It's sort of like that to me. So it deserves a lot of credit, but some of the other cool things that it had, it flew on its one and only time, flew fully autonomously. No one was in it, and it still succeeded perfectly.
So no one was controlling it remotely either?
Nope. All programmed and all autonomous.
Wow.
For 88, that's impressive.
That's massively impressive. And I think now the shuttle could do, I believe, almost everything autonomously as well. As a matter of fact, I think it could fly autonomously, but I still want to think that it even required people to physically do certain things inside the vehicle that you had to do, that the Buran didn't require that. So in that sense, it could fly fully autonomously, where I think the space shuttle, in theory, could do everything on its own. Like, I think it could even land on its own, but each commander, of course, wanted to be the ones that, butter the bread on the runway and have the softest touchdown ever, so they weren't going to let a robot take their jobs, and which is cool. I get it. But so, the shuttle could have done all of that, I think. Please let me know if I'm wrong. But yeah, so the Buran had that update. The other thing that I really like, if you're watching on YouTube, you see this picture here, and notice it has these kind of 4 engines on the back. You might think those look a lot like on the space shuttle, it had the OMS pods sticking off the back, the orbital maneuvering systems, which are the engines that they use to like maneuver it in space and to raise and lower and re-enter, raise and lower its orbit and re-enter itself. What we're seeing on the back of this is not that. These are actually air-breathing jet engines. So they help extend the glide range, help make it so the Buran could actually fly as opposed to just glide. So this meant it could land on potentially other runways. It could go around again if it needed to. It had some safety in that sense that the space shuttle did not. If you miss the runway on a space shuttle, good luck. You're going wherever you're pointed at that point,
And there were only a handful of landings spots that they could actually land because they had to have so much clearance, right?
Yeah, it was a long runway, like 5 kilometers long. It was a crazy runway.
Wow.
There aren't a lot of those available. So really, the space shuttle had 3 primary sites in the U.S., like White Sands, and Edwards Air Force Base and Kennedy Space Center were the only 3 that it could land at, I believe. In the U.S., they had contingency pads if they had to do an abort across the ocean. There was like 2 others, like Africa, I think was somewhere. I don't remember. I'm speaking off the top of my head. I'm going to get something wrong, and everyone's going to be mad at me.
Please be mad at Tim if he gets anything wrong, everyone.
But so the Buran did kind of have its own orbital maneuvering engines down on the back. But that's very different. The space shuttle carried 3 massive engines all the way into orbit, and that's because the space shuttle was meant to be reused. That was its like primary thing, was let's try to actually reuse stuff. The RS-25 main engines, there were 3 of them on the space shuttle. Those weren't cheap. Those are very expensive engines, and the ability to bring them back down from space and recover them and reuse them was groundbreaking and very impressive. But the Buran basically didn't it didn't use propulsion, at all on liftoff. And it was strapped onto the third most powerful rocket ever that only flew twice, once with the Buran and once with another payload called Energia. And the Energia was so impressive. It's this giant, massive rocket here that was all liquid fuel, so they didn't have those solid rocket boosters that the space shuttle did. And it was awesome. So they just strapped it onto that. And what's cool is they could use the Energia. It was more flexible than the space shuttle because they could also put non-Buran payloads on, or in theory, even on top of the Energia too.
Just a second. Did you say that the side boosters are not solid rocket?
They are not solid rockets. They're liquid. There's 4 of them instead of 2.
I thought it looked like it in that picture.
They got little 4 combustion chamber engines on each booster. This was the RD-170 that powered that, which was the most powerful. Each one of these liquid boosters has technically one engine with 4 chambers. It's the most powerful engine ever. It's more powerful than the F1 on the Saturn V. But the difference is it has 4 nozzles, 4 combustion chambers. That was their way of getting around combustion instability. And it's a shame that this amazing engine only flew twice. So, so this is the Buran. It's one of my favorite things ever, and unfortunately, the only one that flew, the OK-1K1. After it flew, and with the fall of the Soviet Union and the end of the Cold War, the whole program was scrapped because the first flight took place in 1988. The next launch was scheduled for 5 years after that, like 1993. And between then, the Cold War ended, and the Soviet Union fell, and therefore all the funding for the program fell as well. And unfortunately, the only one that flew, this OK-1K1, was in a hangar, actually still attached to an Energia like this, sitting here in a hangar just like this, basically. And in 2002, the hangar actually collapsed, and it tragically killed 8 people, 8 workers on the site, and totally destroyed the Buran. So the only one that's ever been to space and flew is now gone. I wish they would have. I would love to see if they kept pieces, because I would pay so much money for that. I would pay $1,000 for a piece of Buran that flew in space, easily. And so that's that. But there were 2 other orbiters, and they are actually in this giant shed. So again, if you're listening to the podcast, it might be worth checking out these pictures. I have these up on my website, everydayastronaut.com. These were actually from a guy named Ralph Mirabs, who I've talked to about trying to go back with him sometime, because he took some of the first pictures of these Buran shuttles, snuck in. I mean, this stuff is crazy. These are at the Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. Wow. And there's 2 shuttles still sitting here, rotting away. Look at them. It's so
now you
sad.
Literally could. It looks like it's an open air thing. You could fly a drone over that probably and just get some really cool shots. Yeah,
it would be unbelievable.
That's amazing.
Some guys just like 2017 snuck in too. I think they actually got caught, but they have an awesome YouTube video of them like going inside them and everything.
Whoa,
I mean,
nice.
Oh,
I cannot tell you how much money I would pay to do that. It would be like that is way up there for me. Like that would be above. I would rather do that than go to space. I'm dead serious. I would rather climb into this than go to space. Yeah. Huge. I'm just a huge fan of it, and I love like abandoned things. And this to me is like the ultimate.
And
oh my gosh.
Lesson of the day: Tim loves abandoned things. Okay.
Have you abandonment issues?
Have you been to my YouTube channel? I feel like it might be for you.
A lot of people have abandoned that.
But there's also one glider prototype. This is kind of similar to the Endeavor, the Enterprise that we have here in the United States. We had a glider prototype that we dropped and learned how to just make sure it could land. They had one of those as well. And that is actually the OK GLI glider, or GL1 GLI. That is actually in Germany at the Technik Museum in Germany. So I do want to see that someday, but as cool as that is, it's not as cool as the actual flight hardware that I would still love to see. So if you happen to know anyone that has scraps of the fallen OK 1K1, please contact me. I will forever thank you. And then if you guys want to sneak off and try to not get arrested and go on a trip to Kazakhstan, maybe that could be where we record next week if you guys want.
I'm good.
So you know what? I'm just going to pose the question. What would it take to actually get one of those? Like, who actually owns it? Is it the Russian government, or if it's in Kazakhstan, do they own it? Like,
oh man,
who, if you wanted to buy it and money was not an option, like, who would you actually buy it from?
That's a really solid question, because it was built and owned by the Soviet Union.
Like, who arrested those guys that got in and
it's on a military
got video
base
of
in
it?
Kazakhstan. So,
Okay.
so I think technically it's kind of owned by them. The whole Russia launching out of another country is still weird in general. Like, they launch from Kazakhstan, and technically where their launch pad is legally like Russia.
Oh yeah.
But then, like, this is technically outside of that, just by a little bit. By literally, we're talking about like kilometers. We're not talking about like 2 or 3 kilometers away or something. We're not talking about like 100 miles away or 100 kilometers away. We're talking about like really close. But that's a good question of like, who owns this? Can we all get on Twitter today and cry to Elon that we want him to buy one? And
seriously,
and put it in
I
a
feel like
glass bubble.
he just has somebody he could call and be like, "Yo, I want that," and they'd be like, "Cool, it's on its way. Just assume it's yours."
Just please save them. This building will probably fall just like that other one.
Yeah.
Look at it. It's so decrepit.
That's why I wouldn't go in there with you, Tim.
I know. That would actually literally, that'd be my biggest fear. Is like, I'm just going to die in here, aren't I?
Yeah.
I'll
Anybody
die
who's
doing what I
listening
love.
to just the audio version of this, I would recommend going to Tim's website and taking a look, because these pictures are pretty cool.
It's so cool. It's so crazy. And of course, since I'm a huge fan of Buran, I almost sold out of these already. I did a limited run of these shirts, and I announced it yesterday. I'm already half sold out. They're shirts, patches, and stickers. I'm wearing one already. I wanted to honor Buran with like a mission patch for its 30th anniversary. So if you do want to get that, you better get over there like right now, because they're going to be sold out very soon.
And so does this mean though that like worldwide we have abandoned the concept of a shuttle? Since obviously we did here, and then this, because of the political stuff, didn't make it.
Well, define shuttle, because technically we actually just reinvested in a mini space shuttle called the Dream Chaser, which is Sierra Nevada won the contract to be able to go. Here, I'll just pull it up here for you guys.
Space plane. Maybe that's a better term to use.
Yeah, I mean, so like this is Sierra Nevada's little Dream Chaser.
Oh, the Dream Chaser. Yeah.
It's a mini space shuttle. It's very small compared to the space shuttle, but they won't be flying people on it anytime too soon. But they're flying uncrewed cargo variants to the International Space Station starting maybe even next year, 2020. They won the next round of contracts. I think is the third round of commercial.
So we're still making like these planes that go in space.
So we're still making space planes, but it's really just a way of. It's a good way to land on land with a space vehicle, a spacecraft, because it's hard to land a capsule, and landing on land is advantageous because you can land closer to where you want to be when you get off the vehicle. Like, it's not convenient to be in the ocean having to get rescued basically every time you land, and it's also it's nice to be able to just get out and low G forces. These land just like a normal jet, so you don't feel high G forces. So you can have that type of stuff. So there's some advantages, but obviously you're also carrying around those heavy wings and stuff the whole way through. Mm-hmm. But we kind of did abandon this for the most part, though, because there's still a lot of refurbishment. And at the end of the day, is the refurbishment cost cheaper than what you're doing before? That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, right. Amy, I know she's a friend of yours. Amy Title, am I saying her last name correctly?
Amy Shira Title, yep.
Title, okay. I knew I was murdering it. But no, she's done some really good videos about the shuttle and why it failed. And it's like when you first brought up the Buran, actually, I was kind of like, maybe they dodged a bullet. Because the shuttle didn't really work. Like, that's actually a good debate. Yeah. Like, was the shuttle a success or a failure? Because it did do some crazy cool stuff, but then ultimately there's a reason why we're not flying it anymore.
Right? Yeah, I guess that's what I'm getting at. Like, have we just kind of said, all right, we're bigger and brighter, like we've learned, and now we're doing new, better things. So we've kind of put that idea to rest. So
yeah, I mean the main concept of the space shuttle was obviously, again, to reuse as much of it as possible. But unfortunately, it came at the cost of just insane refurbishment. Right. And we haven't given up on reusability. And I think one of the keys to SpaceX's success in reusability is they aren't trying to reuse the part that goes into space, into orbit. They're reusing the biggest part. That to me is the key. Is they're reusing the part that's the most expensive, the booster. That's 2/3 of the vehicle is the part that is most worth recovering because it's financially it's the most expensive, but also it's the part that actually has the least stress on it. Since it's not going orbital velocity, it's re-entry. Every time you double your speed, you increase the heat experienced through the vehicle 4 times.
This is like that first principles concept, right? Like if you just say, okay, let's look at reusability. Let's just look at all the parts and all the stuff that we need and go, why are we trying to reuse that when that's way harder? And it turns out to be not actually cost efficient versus this, which is like, just much more sure thing.
Well, and for instance, the space shuttle, they reuse those side boosters. The side boosters on the space shuttle were those giant solid rocket boosters, and they didn't quite even get to space technically. They only got up to like 30 or 40 kilometers in altitude, or sorry, like 60 or 70 kilometers in altitude or something. They didn't quite actually reach out of the Kármán line. They were only, so their velocity was so low, they could, survive falling back through the atmosphere, pull a parachute, and then splash down in the ocean. And since they're basically just a giant tube full of propellant, there's no, the turbo machinery and all the expensive precision parts that are normally in a liquid fuel booster weren't there. And the idea was this would be a cheap, easy way to reuse it. But come to find out, even the boosters going out there, dragging them from the ocean, pulling them back, taking them apart, stripping the paint, repainting them, reassembling them, all the stuff, again,
still not.
It's actually more expensive.
Yeah. Or rebuilding it again.
Yeah.
It's like they needed to land them back on the launch pad somehow.
Imagine if someone could do that.
But you also have to look at that as like, that is so on the thinnest margin of what is physically possible with these vehicles.
Yeah.
The fact that SpaceX is doing it and doing it reliably now is why I'm so excited about that. That's why that's worth applauding. Because when you do look at these and you look at the space shuttle, which was amazing, it's still one of the most complicated and impressive vehicles to ever fly. But you realize why they didn't try to propulsively land. You realize how they got to this conclusion, that you realize because of some of the constraints, the Air Force and the payloads that it was going to fly, it was derived from almost like we have to do this X, Y, and Z. Now try to make it reusable. That'd be nice, but really make sure it can do these, land on these runways and put these things into polar orbit. That never ended up happening for the military, but they had to have it there just in case,
So speaking of being on land, there is that bad?
Great segue. Wait, can we all just say happy 30th flight day to Buran? Just one last
Happy
goodbye,
30th,
buddy.
Buran.
Feliz cumpleaños.
We love you.
I don't know the Russian for
love
happy
you.
birthday.
I love you. Come say hi to me, Buran. I just want to touch some of you. Okay, that just got weird.
Tim's
This
getting a
just
little
turned
dirty on the
into
Buran over here.
Just turned into an ASMR video. Great. Thanks, Tim. Okay, well,
Waymo.
in other transportation news that does exist and is still taking us into the future instead of looking back, Waymo is now offering, or next month will be offering, their ride-sharing service to more people. It's still not 100% public. You can't just go fire up the app. There will be a new brand that Waymo uses for this, and so we don't know the name of that quite yet.
I'm gonna call it
what is
driverless dads.
Yes.
I have no idea.
And so it'll still be in Phoenix. It won't be expanding too far out of there. And they will have backup drivers either in the vehicle or remote monitoring of it. They said that, that the car will drive itself 99.9% of the time. That still leaves, a tenth of the time that it won't be driving itself. And so, they're being very methodical about the rollout here, but exciting stuff. It'll be interesting to see how quickly they can kind of roll this out and expand and scale, because still being very small, it's still a lot easier than having 100% autonomy, right? So excited about it. I have a little video here if you guys are watching on the YouTubes.
Careful, make sure there's no audio.
No audio and yada yada.
They'll get all mad at us.
Yeah, we'll get a copyright strike. But some videos of the of these minivans. They're Chrysler minivans. They have them driving in snow. They have all these crazy sensors on them. It's pretty cool. I think it's exciting. I'm glad they're doing it. I don't know if their approach versus Tesla's approach will kind of win in the end. And then the ultimate question is like whether or not they can scale this. Like how many thousands of vehicles can they actually make at what pace and all that kind of thing. Because, this is Waymo, which is owned by Google or Alphabet. So it's not exactly like a car company making cars, right? So questionable as to kind of how the scale and the ramp up will go. But exciting nonetheless that this is coming.
Two questions. Number one, are they using the hybrid vans at least?
I don't know. Like, is it like is it an internal combustion engine or not?
I know it is internal combustion. The Pacific, I don't think, makes a fully electric, but they do make a plug-in hybrid that has like, I think 30 or 40 mile range electric. And then obviously hybrid after that, which would be it's a great fit for around town commuting like this, just picking up people. Mm-hmm. That's a nice advantage right there for them. Large capacity, roomy. Minivans make sense to me. Why does everyone went to SUVs, and like now that's the soccer mom vehicle to me, and minivans are like what people should be driving instead of trucks. Here we go, rant time.
Yeah,
but that's my
Joe. What do you think? Would you take a ride in one of these?
Totally. Yeah.
You think they'd be allowed in Texas?
I don't know. I mean, actually, so up in Frisco, if you live anywhere near the DFW area, you know what Frisco is, but it's like where the Cowboys are headquartered now. It's like one of the fastest growing counties or areas like in the United States. It's ridiculous. Like it's just every time you drive through, there's a new office building and stuff. But they have something going on up there, and I can't remember what it's called. Maybe it's called Orange, or maybe just the color was orange. Something about orange. But anyway, no, they've got a fleet of autonomous vehicles in this one like Frisco town center. It's like one of those multi-purpose, residential office building areas. It's kind of like its own little world right there. But no, they signed with some group that's going to be doing basically what this is doing up there. So
but it obviously has more guns on it because it's in Texas, right?
Yeah, of course, it's got missile launchers and IEDs. No, it's so I mean, yeah, it's on its way.
Yeah, it's exciting.
The last thing I wanted to ask about this. So real quick, find one of those spots where it shows like the boxes around people and stuff.
Yeah, I like the one towards the end.
You know what I'm talking about when it's like it predicts and kind of shows what. I have a question of when will that smooth out a little bit? It seems like Tesla does, with their graphics, where I get that there's going to be errors where the radar might think for a millisecond that, it's 15 meters away. 5 meters away. And you'll see things like bounce around like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, when are they going to find a happy medium there where it's like just knowing that an object physically cannot do this and just like calm it down a little bit? Like, why are computers so bad at like, it's this size. No, it's this size. It's this size. Yeah. It's over here. It's over there.
I think that the Tesla, inside of the Tesla car, where you have the visualization, right, the animation showing you the other cars it sees, definitely has some issues right now. I will say from the trip I went on with the Mercedes self-driving team, and we had the developer kind of edition in. It was like an engineering car that they're using for testing. Mm. The stuff that they showed inside of there was much more sophisticated than these kind of animations. Like their car, for example, was looking at the path of every object that it could see, and it could see something crazy like 90 meters out. And so, wow. I mean, that's far, right? And so what it was doing is it was plotting what every object was, the path it was taking, right? So like if it was walking and which direction it was walking in.
Well, and hit play on here. It showed that lady and it showed her direction of travel in this thing.
And it was trying to predict whether or not that thing would intercept the car. So
kind of like this.
Yeah, exactly. So it tries to figure out, it's almost exactly like this, where it's looking at it going, oh, wait a minute. Let me look at every object I can possibly see. Am I going to hit it, or is it going to hit me? And some of the really difficult things that it tries to figure out is like, if a person, as you can kind of see in this, what we're looking at here, this diagram, is a person walking not in a crosswalk. And if they're not in a crosswalk, where are they possibly walking? Are they going to wander in front of me? Do I need to slow down?
I think this next animation shows that, or somewhere there's a lady like jogging.
Yeah, and she kind of runs into the street.
Yeah, you know what's crazy to me? Like, I get why this is so hard, but it's even more amazing to me that we can do this intrinsically. Like humans, holy cow. We're amazing at that. Predicting where things are moving and just seeing it and just knowing like instinctually where that stuff's going.
That stuff that just naturally occurs to us is like so hard for a computer. I was driving, I don't know when this was, doesn't matter, but I was driving and I was like at a stoplight and one of the lanes was backed up pretty far and I was coming up on the right-hand side and I just could tell that one of these guys was about to pull out in front of me. Mm-hmm. I don't know how I could tell. I could just tell. And sure enough, the guy did it. And I remember that happening and I was like, how could a computer ever do that? Yeah. You know? There's just like an intuition thing that we have and maybe they'll figure that out. But that was something that kind of stuck out to me. It's like, how do you create an algorithm that does that?
If we can fast forward into the future, like a good amount, hopefully what'll happen is every car will become much smarter and we will have some sort of standards where the cars can communicate with each other. In which case, if a car is aiming to, say, get around traffic as your Navigate on Autopilot Model 3 does now, it could send out some sort of signal or something else to where other cars coming up would know, hey, this guy's trying to get over. You know, I think that's pretty far down the road because first off, that's like literally every car has to have it. And then second off, you have to get all the different car companies to agree on a standard way of communicating and what these signals mean. But I think there's some potential there where like the cars could be better if they knew how to talk to each other.
Yeah.
Well, and ultimately when that happens, it's the safest thing in the world because,
right.
You know,
yeah.
And extrapolating beyond that, a car could use a car 100 meters in front of it to say what's on the road. So it could, it could have its vision extended forever. You know, it could have its vision extended for a whole perimeter of a kilometer around you and understand, what everything is seeing. Yeah. And even crazier, imagine if intersections and country roads had, like little LiDAR on top of all the streetlights and could communicate that to the cars.
Well, this is
saying like,
this is that
around the corner, there's a cow here.
Yeah, the whole solar roadways thing. Did you guys ever see that? It was like a Kickstarter a while ago.
Freaking roadways.
Yeah,
of course. Yeah,
well, that was one of their things, right? Was you could have lights in the road and have that detect something like an elk or something that's on the road just based on the weight and like the foot pattern or something else, and then have that, tell the car something like that. Like, I think that, this whole transportation evolving like this is a pretty interesting thing that we're going to see some really, really dramatic changes here in the near future. So exciting stuff.
Yeah, I posed the question in one of my videos a while back, like, which do you think will really take off first or faster, the electric car or the autonomous car? Or I mean, I know that there's sort of parallel technologies that, they're two great things that go great together. They're like peanut butter and chocolate, but like, which one do you, we're kind of seeing both of them evolving really fast at the same time. And I'm just kind of curious if there's one that's going to kind of.
I think the electric car, man, personally.
Yeah.
Well,
because I was thinking maybe the autonomous car, just because there's so much more hardware involved with electric than software.
Well, define come first. Like, what's your metric? Is it that you own one? Like the average, which, you know what I mean? Like, is it that the autonomous cars will outnumber non-autonomous cars on the road before electric cars outnumber, internal combustion cars?
Right. That's a good metric. I didn't really have a metric in mind.
To that, I would definitely say electric's going to win, just because I think that's going to happen.
Well, the electric
I don't know,
thing is solved, right? we have the technology for legit electric cars.
It's just scaling
valid electric cars.
Yeah, and so while even if we're with Waymo 99.9% there, that's still not 100% there, right? Like I would argue that we still don't have a fully autonomous vehicle that exists, period.
Yeah. And even when the technology is ready, say it's 3 more years before they totally perfect it to 100%, that's still a long time to roll out that technology across enough people that they outnumber non-self-driving cars. And I think electric cars, we're closing that. They're going to hit that gap really soon.
In some countries, like Norway, for example, we're already there. So yeah, that would be my argument for it. Now, speaking of electric cars, since we're on the topic, there is some breaking Tesla news, guys.
Ooh.
Mr. Musk himself tweeting out during our recording, he knew that we were doing it. Tesla acquired trucking capacity to ensure Model 3s can be delivered in the U.S. by December 31st if ordered by November 30th.
Whoa.
That is major.
Whoa.
That is major. Why is that major? Because December 31st is when the federal tax credit in the United States starts to phase out. And so if your car is delivered on January 1st, you will be getting half of that tax credit that you would be getting if you got it on December 31st. So
wow,
big stuff. I think we're going to see a huge amount of deliveries or orders here happening because of this. So the question then was like, okay, what does that mean? Elon expanded, saying that skipping rail saves over a month for East Coast deliveries. All things considered, great podcast. It's better to use trucks, single load and unload, and direct to owner location. Now, Joe, when you picked up your Model 3, you actually went to a place, right? You didn't. They didn't deliver to your house.
Yeah.
Okay, because I know that some places, and you, Tim, as well, right? You went, but you had to go Minneapolis. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I know that other folks that live in like smaller areas or something like that, right? Or, they do deliver direct. So anyways, Elon continued to say that they will use dedicated roll-on, roll-off fast ships for transporting cars to Europe and Asia in Q1. Major focus on minimizing the time from factory to new owner. Did not fully appreciate the working capital impact until recently.
Because they finally are actually having money come in. Weird.
Frederick Lambert said, can you elaborate on acquired trucking capacity? How did you secure that? Now we need a t-shirt that says like trucking secured. And Elon replied saying, we bought some trucking companies and secured contracts with major haulers to avoid trucking shortage mistake of last quarter. Dang. So order your Model 3s, folks. You've got exactly 15 days from the date of this recording to order your Model 3 and make sure you get it before the year ends so you can take advantage of that tax credit.
Wow. So they fixed the production bottleneck for the most part, and this was the logistics bottleneck that seems to have been holding things up.
It's the game of whack-a-mole. I harp on it forever. I've been in corporate America too long. You see it over and over again.
Yep.
You fix one thing and another one pops up. You go fix that one, another one pops up. It's a never-ending cycle, right?
Yeah, that's great though. I mean, that's what this is. It's exciting,
Yeah, I think this is huge because previously they had said, what was it, October 15th? I think was the previous date where they said make sure to order before this date, otherwise you may not get it. Mm-hmm. And so maybe they were hedging a little bit, and so now. Yeah, Q3 was massive. Q4, stands to be even more massive. So big stuff.
They're going to finally be doing deliveries in Europe now, by the way. We haven't even really talked about that because they finally announced like the actual different charger and everything.
Yeah.
So,
now we're talking about international deliveries even. So hold on to your butts. It's time for an overhaul.
Yeah, and so photos are now surfacing from Barcelona, where there is a Model 3 on display. Munich has one that I've seen. I've not seen any other ones pop up, but Model 3 is making its way to Europe, which also means. Yeah, it's going to start supporting the cell networks and stuff out there. Because if you remember Yo-Yo Shu, who had taken his over from the U.S., I did an interview with him after he unfortunately totaled it and had to come back. But one of the challenges he had is that his car didn't connect to the cell networks over there. So he was like, didn't have navigation, or it's kind of wild, honestly. Like you're just driving. I mean,
you're just driving a car. Like
exactly.
Car.
It's like, and then, charging, of course, was a challenge. So, But yeah, all good stuff. So folks in Europe, you guys are, should be stoked. In the US, if you are eligible for that tax credit, which from all the estimates I've seen is like 50,000, if you make around 50,000 US per per year or more, you should be able to take full advantage of it. Make sure to get that order in, man.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Profitability, not a bad thing.
Not a bad
well,
thing
it's a
at
good
all.
thing they got these bottlenecks figured out before they launched that $35,000 model, because I still think that that's when things are really going to take off in terms of.
How is it for you guys?
I think there's a lot of people that are just sitting around waiting for that. Like that's what they signed up for in the first place.
My brother's one of them. How is it for you guys where you live? Joe, obviously you're in a more populated city, so maybe for you, like, do you see a lot of Teslas around?
I see one every day.
Yeah. In your garage?
Almost every day I see a. Thank you. No, I barely even leave my house, so it's pretty impressive. But I don't know how much of that is. They call it the Bader-Meinhof phenomenon, which is like any new car. Like when my wife got a new Honda, I started seeing that Honda Civic everywhere I went. Right. It's like it's a psychological thing. So I don't know how much of it is that, but I want to say it's not that, because before I got my Tesla, I was still looking for Model 3s everywhere. And every time I saw one, I was like, whoa, there's a Model 3. And I was probably freaking out even more than now. But I feel like I see them all the time now. Yeah,
same here. I mean, I knew one of my friends has two. He has an S and an X. That's about the only one I'd see in town. I might see this gray one every now and then, like an S. And now, I mean, I'm seeing there's multiple S's, and I'm starting to see 3s all over the place too. I've seen 3 or 4 different Model 3s in town, it's awesome. I live in a pretty small town, so that's pretty game changing.
Population 41,570, according to Google.
There you go. Pretty small town. Well, the adjoining community, we have another, like, we're connected to a bigger city, Waterloo. That's our whole metropolitarian area. I don't know how you say that.
Region?
Metropolitarian?
Sure. Metropolitarian region is over 100,000. So not tiny. I don't live in a barn, but still pretty small by most people's standards.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool. You have more subscribers than there are people that live in your town.
In your metropolitarian.
It'll be a long time before I get there.
Yeah, you'll have to be one of those platinum or whatever it's called. Is that what it's called? YouTube Platinum?
Or get the Ruby one.
The Ruby one, yeah. 50 million. All right, well.
Has anyone got that yet, by the way?
Well, PewDiePie, yeah. And now T-Series, whoever that is. Because they're like neck and neck with PewDiePie. Anyways, back to electric cars. There is a new one I want you guys to check out. So you've not seen this. I've not shown it to you. This is a company called Rivian. They are out of Irvine, California, I believe. And they are unveiling their first electric adventure vehicle, they call it. The specs
EAV.
Yeah, an EAV. I believe the unveiling is on the 26th of November, and I am going to go check it out. I don't know what we'll get to do.
Nice.
Maybe drive it or something. It's at the Griffith Observatory.
They have something?
Huh?
Do they have something to drive?
I mean, I am a critic of car unveilings now after having been to several of them. So if you don't have a car that I can get in and know it's real, then I won't be too nice to you, unfortunately. Yeah. But yeah, so go ahead.
Sorry, was it Lucid where they couldn't get the car to roll off the stage? They turned off the light and snuck somebody into it to drive it away?
Oh my gosh, no, I have no idea.
Push it away or something like that.
Yes,
Yeah, I think it was Lucid
sure,
that did
yes.
that.
Oh, brutal. So high hopes. So these guys are all about kind of like the adventurers, the folks that want to get out, go camping, do that kind of stuff. It's not like the sleek, sexy, urban vehicles like a Model 3 or something like that. The specs that they state on their website are wild. 400 plus mile range, which I would be super stoked on. Now, this one I really have a hard time believing. Sub 3 second 0 to 60. That's a feat. And then, it's kind of like an off-road vehicle here. So let me pull up. They have like this whole.
I believe that Sub-Zero 0 to 60, because even if it is off-roady, it could be lighter weight or similar weight to a Model X, and that can be under 3 seconds 0 to 60.
So they use this skateboard design, which is copied essentially from Tesla. And this is kind of the main crux of it. Of course, that's why Teslas are so great, is because they use the same design. But they say, street smart, dirt, rock, and dune ready. So taking this to the dunes is what they're implying here. And they have these diagrams on their website about, just how all this stuff works. So I don't doubt that.
Hold on, hang on. Click on that one again.
The powertrain one?
Hold on,
let me go back.
Yes. Let me just read you that thing. Pure electric propulsion. That's engineer speak for smooth, quiet. That's not engineer speak. Pure electric propulsion? Like, that's not. If you don't know what that means.
You haven't talked to many engineers, have you?
That's engineer speak.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen. Electric motor.
Let's see what else they say. Air suspension. Okay.
Oh, sorry. I just had to throw that in.
Ooh, maximize energy density. See, okay, so I want to know. So here's what I want to know before the event, or at the event. Here's what I want to do. I want to see it. I want to ride in it, so I can get a feel for it, and I want to know the price of the vehicle, and then like how am I going to charge this? Because I'll tell you what, Elon constantly says that the supercharger network is open. They're willing to work with anyone else that just wants to pay their fair share of the usage of it, and they just need to make their own adapters or whatever, like go through some certification program. So, I think that any startup here would be very keen to first off try to buy your batteries from Tesla because they make the best ones. Use the skateboard design as these guys appear to be doing, and then leverage their charging network. I mean, compete. Yeah. You're going to have to compete on the margins, right? Tesla owns the core pieces, and no one can compete with them on that. I mean, this is why the big automakers that are trying to compete with them are really falling short. So I'm hoping that these guys are being really smart and essentially saying, yeah, look, Tesla's doing, these pieces the best. We're just going to buy them from them. And then we'll kind of expand and kind of innovate on top of that.
And that's nothing new for the automotive industry. There's how many times has there been a different engine from a totally different manufacturer in a car, or even the same chassis, and they just put a little bit of twist on it and call it their own vehicle. I mean, that's utilizing other people's parts and equipment is nothing new. And it is absolutely, I do not understand why more people aren't taking Tesla up on their supercharger network. It's just, it's insane to me.
Yeah, I don't get it.
It's a huge advantage.
So it looks, this stuff, I'm very curious to see how this goes because I love the idea of more electric vehicle startups that are seriously competing, right? 400 miles of range. Yes, you would currently have the longest range electric vehicle if that's true. So, then price, charging, how are you going to manufacture it, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of questions. Yeah. I'm excited to go check it out on the 26th. And
keep us
more
updated because I want them to succeed. This is great. I really hope that they can I hope that they're only announcing this because they're like, hey, by the way, we're taking orders now.
Yes.
They're shipping Q2. Like, that would be amazing or something. I want that for them because I don't want another startup of like, we're hoping to ship in 2022. Like, no, you're gone.
Yeah. I mean, that's really the problem, right? And I talked about this in my Dear Tesla Killers video. 400 plus miles of range. Fantastic. If you had that car today, that would sell out immediately, right? Like it would just be gone. It would just be a no-brainer for so many people. If you're saying 400 miles in 2022, I'm afraid that might be standard in 2022. So while that may sound super impressive now, at that point in time, that might even become standard next year. I fully expect Tesla to come out with a higher capacity, model early next year. Like I'm thinking we'll see that at the Model Y event, maybe.
Yeah.
So I had to go wrangle my dogs. Was there actually a picture on there of the car, or is that what they're unveiling at the
That's
event?
I assume what they're unveiling at the event. There's no pictures of it now. They have. It's kind of, I don't know if you want to say tongue in cheek or whatever, but on their website, it's called an electric adventure vehicle. And so they just have like a drone shot of like a dirt road that like somebody just ripped through with at 100 miles an hour, and you just see the dust floating. So I think it's good. I like that.
What's the other electric car that's kind of like a Jeep and it starts with a B? I can't think of it right now.
I want to say Bollinger, but I'm not sure.
Bollinger, that's it. Yeah.
Is that it?
I think so.
Yeah, I
didn't know what their specs were in terms of like what you were just talking about, whether it's up there.
Yeah, are they actually making them though? The last time I heard about it, it was just kind of a concept, right? Are you guys?
I thought they were making it. But
are you guys seeing this? The B2 pickup truck.
Well, everybody's reading our messages right now.
Whoops! You're looking at my
Facebook. Or your messages.
Edit point.
Let's go back here. You can see who I'm going to lunch with.
There's my home address and social security number.
Yeah, okay. The B2 pickup truck. Bollinger Motors is proud to announce all-electric B2 pickup truck sharing the same DNA as the B1. Okay. Dual motors, all-wheel drive, hydro pneumatic suspension, in-wheel portable gear hubs, 120 kilowatt-hour battery pack. Okay. Large front trunk space.
But look they just stuck this is, I don't know if you guys watched Top Gear, the UK version, when they made the Thunder, what's that called? The Eagle eye thrust or whatever.
What?
Let me show you guys
the eye
top.
thrust.
They just built the Top Gear Eagle eye thrust.
520. Hold on, let's just look at the specs real quick.
I can't wait to show you this. This is all they did.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, let me take the screen over.
All right, let's see Tim's.
I gotta that Bollinger, whatever you're gonna call it, is basically this. The Top Gear Eagle eye thrust that they built. I mean, look at that.
Yeah, that looks like
it's just a box with some wheels.
Yeah. Now,
but it has a nice crash bar.
I think
a wooden door.
There is an uncanny resemblance. I think the biggest things that obviously the biggest challenges a new electric car company faces are sourcing batteries. That's the biggest one. And then assembly of the vehicle. How do you actually build the damn thing? And then once you get it out there, how do people use it, right? So charging is a big aspect of it. Now, if you're talking little 80-mile range commuters and you're just bopping around the city, that's a different story. Versus what I believe is necessary are electric vehicles that are on par with or even better than gas cars. So I think it's one of those things. I'm excited to see it though.
I mean, like you said, Tesla has the key to the batteries. I mean, that's to me one of the biggest things that Tesla has that people just don't understand how big of a thing that is, and why I don't understand why they get shorted. Like
even the Daimler CEO said it. Whoever I think it was Daimler. Maybe I'm misquoting, but he said basically whoever has the best battery tech will win. Mm-hmm. And so that's to me why Tesla's winning. It'd make more sense to go to them than it would be to try to do it on your own, I think.
And to me, the battery technology is, again, it's almost like oil and the engine. So now you're owning the oil plant. You're the guy out there refining oil. You're also the person out there producing an engine, almost in a sense. Like you're combining two sectors of industry, and you can kind of take from both of them. Like that's huge.
Yeah. Speaking of batteries,
Well, I came wholly unprepared for today's episode, but there was one little. I'll share my screen real quick, but there was one little article that I ran across, and I'm not even going to say I fully understand it, but it's really neat to me in terms of like new storage solutions for battery and energy and stuff. So, you can probably see my little Zoom thing. You don't need to see that. No, I mean, the headline is from Forbes. It says, scientists reveal strange molecule that can store the sun's energy for 18 years. So yeah, it says a Swedish research team believes it found a breakthrough in renewables that was looking for a solar thermal fuel that can store the sun's energy for 18 years. I'm not just going to sit here and read this article, but it's basically talking about how it basically stores the energy in a certain type of molecule called norbor. I'm going to murder this. Norbornadiene. That's totally right. That's totally how it's pronounced.
Yeah.
Norbornadiene. Let's go with that. And then, so when these molecules are hit by sunlight, some of the bonds between the atoms are rearranged to form quadricycline, whatever those are. Boom. But anyway, it stores it in these molecules, and then it doesn't really go away until you hit it with a catalyst, and then it can turn it back into energy that can be used. So it just stores this energy indefinitely, basically.
But it's thermal energy, it looks like, right? Which isn't a
well,
bad
if it's
thing
held
per
in
se.
chemical bonds, that would be chemical energy, wouldn't it?
Well,
Well, it says it rearranges the chemical bonds back into I can't pronounce it, and it releases it with quite a lot of heat. So I guess it actually uses that heat to create.
I think it's just a thermal storage, which would be great though for reusable energy as far as, in our houses and stuff. Like if you could collect all the sun during the summer and release it during the winter for free heat.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Speak for yourself there, buddy.
Yeah, but you could ship that maybe.
You can tell who lives in a cold climate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be weird though? You just get a truck pulls up to your house in the
gives you some
before,
little
in the fall
pouch battery cell things
that came from the southern hemisphere.
Yeah.
All the heat from the southern hemisphere. Like that'd be crazy actually.
Well, that I just want to kind of use that as a jumping off point or a diving board or whatever to get into the whole thing. And Ben, you covered this in a video just the other day, but the fact that we're reaching a tipping point in battery storage where was it in LA where they did this? Where they were replacing, the plan was to replace 3 gas peak power plants.
Correct. Yeah, with 2 gigawatt
storage
hours of storage. So these will both be the actual 2 largest lithium-ion batteries in the world. One from Vilstra, I think it's called, and the other one from Tesla. And they're both I think I'd have to look it up exactly, but they're 700 megawatt hours each. So it's and in comparison, the current largest one is in South Australia at 129 megawatt hours. So
it's 6 times more.
Yeah, this is a major jump. So overall, it'll be over 2 gigawatt hours of energy storage.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And
but
so
this is the ancillary technology that is built off of what they had to build in order to make their electric cars, profitable and possible. And the fact that we've always seen those charts where it's petroleum is going this way and battery. I can't. It's like this. They're going in opposite directions. The battery cost and the petroleum or fossil fuel cost, and I think we're actually getting at that point now where it's people are doing it not because we're gonna save the whales and keep polar bears around, and it's because it's cheaper. It makes more economic sense, and that's when. We were talking before we started recording. BP just bought some. They bought ChargePoint a while back, but they just bought something else recently. Yeah, and getting involved in the battery.
They bought a power packs from Tesla for a wind farm that they're building.
Oh right, yeah.
They're seeing it as it's financially makes sense to them. Like you're saying, it's happening.
Well, and
oil companies are having to buy that stuff.
It's either do that or become Blockbuster.
Yep.
Or regulate your way and force it to be like the coal industry and some of these other ones, right? But so I think there's nothing that exemplifies that shift more than actually where you live, Joe, because Texas is one of the biggest wind energy producers in the world. And this is
Here comes the T. Boone Pickens reference.
Thank you. See, I love me some T. Boone Pickens. But it's one of those things where people like that, like people that are really big into oil, are not dumb. and they're looking at it, probably weighing their options of like, all right, how much money do we have to spend on lobbying to keep this stuff relevant, and keep our way of doing business now intact versus developing this new stuff, which is all gonna in the end make us even more money. It's just a simple equation of what will make us more money. And I think when, as you mentioned, we have renewables that are on par or better than the other options we have, they'll win. Because at that point, the one thing that all these folks love more than anything else is money. And so if you can win on the money side of it, then you can win overall. People will, they'll probably still deny climate change is a thing. But honestly, for me and everyone else,
who cares?
Yeah, it's like, I don't care. Like, let's go for it.
I've always said that I think some of the most powerful arguments for embracing renewables are the conservative ones,
right?
The ideologically conservative ones, because it's really easy to just fluff off, wow, hippie or whatever, but it's like when it comes down to just straight up money, straight
up money and independence, energy independence,
national security.
We're kind of already there, right?
Yeah, we're now the biggest oil producer in the world.
Yeah. But we are because of what was it in the 70s, the gas crisis or whatever, where we were totally dependent on the other oil producers. OPEC. And so we were like, yep, never again,
Yeah. So I want to play a little bit of devil's advocate on this topic for just a second. I did have someone, I commented, Elon mentioned something like, it was something about renewable energy just recently, like last week in a tweet. And I tweeted like, if, I kind of have this mantra, if you're not betting and investing in renewable energy right now, and you're still, an oil baron or something, like you deserve to lose your money. Like you are placing the wrong bet. Like you, again, like Joe said, that chart of this is getting more expensive, this is getting cheaper. And if you're lobbying to actively, but that being said, I do understand that some people, maybe 20 years ago invested in something that's going to take 40 years to pay off. And if it shifts really quickly, they lose everything. And it might, I saw someone had tweeted back to me saying like, hey, just so you know, like I'm the biggest, I love like renewable energy, but my company does rely on this industry, this oil industry to do X, Y, and Z. And it's not as easy as just, I'm just going to start buying solar now or whatever. Like there's always going to be complications to making a transition. But, and like Ben, like you said, people are obviously probably weighing, do I lobby against this? And a lot of it might just be, we have to lobby and keep it the way it is for only like 4 more years. Some of these people might be going like, if we can just get past that tipping point, then we don't care because we at least
because there's a cost to making that change. Right.
Yes.
And so when that cost is significantly greater than the other costs of trying to keep things the way they are, you're not, it just economically, it makes sense to not make the change.
To hold off.
Yeah. Like I can give you even a kind of analogous example in the tech world where I was working at a company and we were using an old version of this software for our customer relationship stuff and, one of our key parts of our business. And we didn't want to upgrade to the newest version because the cost of that was greater than a $700,000 a year contract for support on an old version. And so the company, but again, it just came down to it and said, well, look, okay, yes, we all would like to move to this new software, and eventually we will have to. But right now, the company will just keep supporting it, as long as we keep paying them more money. And as long as that is like significantly cheaper than switching, then that's what we're going to do because bottom line, that's like what it comes down to.
I hope one of you guys knows the name of this. I used to work at a camera store and they used the system from the 80s for like inventory and stuff. It was unbelievably complicated. Like literally to check someone out. I still remember some of this. It was like hit F3, hit net 20, punch over to this, hit this screen, F9, type in this field. You go back. It was so hard. I messed up almost every time because there just wasn't any rhyme or reason to anything.
Right.
And I was always like, why haven't you updated this? What are you doing? And they're like, it would be unbelievably hard to update it. I'm like,
and expensive.
Just start over.
Yeah.
You get that inertia.
But they're like, yeah, like we can't. Like it'd be insane. Our whole system is based on this. I'm like,
yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
So I'm reading a book right now and I can't say the title on here because then I'd have to edit the video, but it's BS Jobs, but they're not saying BS. The actual title is,
okay.
Yeah.
for the kiddies, I'll say BS. But it's basically all about how, it's just about how corporate structures kind of create these redundant jobs and how there's like this epidemic of people working jobs that contribute nothing to the world and they get no value out of it whatsoever, but they need a job. So they do this thing. But that was one of the things I was talking about. I was talking about Band-Aid jobs where it was almost exactly like what you just said, Ben. It's like instead of investing the money to fix a problem, it's better to just hire somebody to sort of manage it.
Yeah.
And create some job that does nothing. And he was using the analogy. He said, it's like if you had a leak in your roof and instead of paying to fix the roof, you hire somebody to just change out the bucket.
Right. No, that's exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And yeah, in my example, we full on had people at the company that worked just to support the software, and it didn't break very often. So their job was basically nothing. Yeah. Exactly. But it was kind of a contingency plan. If it broke or, you needed somebody, they were there. Yeah, it's wild.
So crazy.
But, it makes economic sense is the problem, right? That's like what it comes down to.
Right.
So,
yeah, I still think one of the best things we could do, because we do have a lot of subsidies right now, on oil and renewable energy. There's subsidies there. But I think the best thing we could do financially and to help move it forward, and everyone says this, conservatives and liberals, this isn't really political. It's just a carbon tax.
100% with you, man.
Factor in the cost on the backside of the.
Yes,
it's called a Pergovian tax. Have you guys studied this?
Oh yeah, I study this every day, Ben. No, I don't know what a Pergovian. I
heard about that emperor. Emperor Pergovian.
Economics guy over here. So So yes, I'm 100%. So the carbon tax idea is that. This Pergovian tax essentially is the cost that society bears is not wholly absorbed in the production of that thing. So a good example is smoking, how secondhand smoke causes healthcare problems, and those healthcare problems are absorbed by taxpayers and society at large, right? By higher premiums and whatever. So you add on tax to the sale of those products, of cigarettes in this case, to offset the kind of total cost that society bears. And so carbon emissions are essentially the same concept, where the cost, the actual cost that a company makes to mine and refine and then sell and whatever, does not truly encapsulate the total cost that we as a society, or as, in this case as a planet, bear. So a carbon tax makes sense to really kind of encapsulate that, so that when they're selling something, they are paying the true cost of it, not just like the isolated cost it took to do steps 1 through 5. So that's the concept.
Again, scientifically here, I really hope to not rile up anyone's political beliefs or anything, because I don't want this to be a political issue.
That's a bipartisan thing, though. Like, in fact, the guy leading the carbon tax thing, I think, was Reagan's former chief of economics or whatever.
Yeah, and Reagan was a big push for renewable energy because it was energy independence, but what the big thing that people are actually realizing now today, like in Miami, for instance, they're having to invest millions and millions of dollars raising, creating a border around their city so it can survive the rising ocean. Like that's tangible. Like you can see that now. You can see streets in Miami flooding today because of these results. And Miami's one of a lot of cities that would be affected. And it's these actual tangible goods, these actual costs that you can go and calculate, that I think we just literally need to start factoring in now, because people are taking it, they're not thinking that way, and they need to be,
Yep.
Well, again, it all goes back to economics. It's like, what is it? What's the Ben Franklin quote? A penny of prevention is worth a pound of cure, or an ounce of prevention worth a pound of cure. I've got my monetary whatever, but the point is, like, if you invest the money to prevent the seas rising and whatnot, then it's going to cost money either way. So we might as well prevent the heartache and the human catastrophe that could be coming along. You might as well invest the money now.
As humans, we're just bad at doing that because that means change is always scary and bad.
Well, it's pay me now or pay me dearly later. Right. Mm-hmm. In the data, in my field in data, we've always said this, like having very clean, well kind of maintained data infrastructure at a company, a startup early is super important, because trying to figure it out way down the road is going to cost you 10 to 100 times more. Right. It's the same concept, so, but hopefully as, whatever these solutions are come out, do make economic sense. Yeah. Any political reasons for not, for not doing them, we should kind of go by the wayside, because this is the same with electric cars, right? When the thing's faster and safer and just better objectively, it doesn't matter what your other, views on them are. They're just better. Yeah. Like you just do it, So I'm excited about that.
That was a good soapbox.
Yeah.
Good soapbox we just all stood on. It supported all three of us.
I like topics that are kind of roundtable discussions, because they're just things that I think people want to hear. Like I do like hearing the discerning voice sometimes, or the opposition. Like I understand how this stuff works, but a part of me is just like, it's so easy to see where we're heading and like what we're going to be doing. It does frustrate me when things stand in that way. I'm just such a well, we know the answer. Let's go do it. That's the way I handle like everything in my life, is like, once I know, I'm like, all right, and tomorrow I fly to New Zealand or whatever, it's like, I love, like when I know something, you just go do it. And I hate when society kicks and drags their feet, but I get it.
It doesn't work that way.
It doesn't work that way. Doesn't work that way. But
cool. I think we did it, guys. I think we did episode 10.
Part 2. And we did better this. I liked the discussion we had about Buran and all the things. Now that you guys knew some more of the information, I think the things we talked about were better. So you're welcome.
We didn't do the Jimmy Fallon keying up. It's like, so you have a story about the blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Please tell me this thing I've never heard.
Yeah, exactly. What are you guys working on?
Holiday gifts for Tesla owners.
Oh, cool.
I need to do that. I need to do that before Black Friday.
I was making my Christmas list and it's like half Tesla stuff.
What's on it? I'm curious how my recommendations line up.
The floor mats.
Yep, that's number 2 on my list.
Cup holder.
Cup holder?
The cup holder, the thing that goes down at the bottom of the cup holder so it's easier to clean.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
There's a word for it.
Cup holder guard.
What's that?
A guard? Cup holder guard?
Maybe. But I found one on Amazon that like has the cup holder and it has like liners for the storage places in there too. And it's got like kind of a white outline. It's kind of neat.
So are we all working on holiday videos?
No.
Like holiday shopping videos?
Tis the season.
I was making my own Christmas list and it was Tesla stuff.
Okay.
I also have. So are you guys, one of my ideas previously was a cell phone mount. Because when I first got my car, it was actually super useful. But now I think the navigation stuff is so good that I don't know if I recommend it as much,
Yeah, I don't need that junk. I don't want to clutter up that area. I like it nice and clean.
But, I'll tell you what, if you drive through LA a lot, Waze, prior to the updates to the navigation and stuff, it was a requirement. You had to use Waze, otherwise you could spend an extra hour in traffic. So, I think now it's maybe not as big a deal. But what do you guys...
I have to tell... the quickest mini story about Waze. It's like an ongoing joke that Uber drivers will always take Waze and they just will take these random routes. In Paris, we were going from the airport to downtown. Our Uber driver, the interstate, yes, it was slow, but it was moving and we're supposed to get there in 45 minutes. Next thing you know, he's zooming in and out, Wazing all around. We got there an hour and 50 minutes from when we left the airport.
What?
He tacked on an hour going down, turning around mid alleyway. He went through the Arc de Triomphe, which is the worst congested area in the whole city, because he was following Waze. Oh, look at this. I'm stick to the highway, dude. What are you doing?
Next time you got to just take the RER, the train.
Yes.
I'll tell you what, though. Pro tip, if you are going from Paris back to the airport on the train, you have to have the correct ticket for that train, because that is how you get into the airport. If you don't have that ticket, you cannot get into the airport. You have to go back on the train, back to a station where you can buy one.
God.
They do not sell them at the airport.
Whoa.
Yeah,
That's efficient.
That was a
Good
scary
tip. Pro tip.
Yeah, that was a big pro tip.
You heard it here first, folks. Joe, what are you working on?
Well, if I can pimp today's video that came out this morning, my little random Thursday video, it's on the most inbred people of all time. I look at the Habsburgs of the royals of Europe and how inbred they were, the royals of ancient Egypt. There was a clan in Kentucky called the Blue Fugates. They had blue skin and lived in the woods, and they were almost like Bigfoot. It was like a lore, like there were these blue hillbillies, and people actually didn't believe they were real. And then like in the 60s, they started coming out literally out of the woodwork. And did
they eat
they had
colloidal silver? Is that why they were blue?
No, they had this extremely rare recessive gene for something called methemoglobin, which is like a blue version of hemoglobin. And because they were so isolated, they kind of intermarried and interbred, and then they because they looked so different, they kind of got ostracized even further, and that kind of made it even worse. So it just kind of happened that way.
Okay, that's the clickbaitiest in the best way ever, because I have to see that video.
I hope it does well, because I think it's like...
Did anyone get decapitated?
No, it's not a decapitation. But I made it, and then I like found myself watching it like 3 or 4 times. Like I actually was enjoying watching it.
Nice.
Like it's something that I would want to go watch if I was screwing around on YouTube.
That's what's important. That's what I keep saying. Like I just want to make videos that I want to watch and like want to...
Yeah. And I think it hit just the right mix of like humor and
I wish I could agree with you guys on that. I made a video where I was crushing fruit in the trunk of my Tesla, and I had an absolute blast making it, and I would watch it because I thought it was so good. People absolutely hated it.
Well, I didn't like that video. No offense.
Oh, scientific testing of which trunk do not want your arm to get stuck in.
I get it.
I got the idea. I thought it was good.
It was just a goofy thing. So
I bet you guys can guess what I'm working on.
Same thing you're always working on?
I made a lot of progress though, finally.
Taking over the world?
Yeah. I've been working on that stupid canceled spaceflight video, and it's been just killing me, and it's cursed. Because this week it was all about me getting that web store finalized and up, and I have been losing sleep over that, and it's, I think, finally going okay, but it has been a nightmare. Switching over like that, like, yeah, has been crazy. So I did that. My music's finally coming online, like any day now, finally.
Can I just really quick, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I have to say this. Your using of the Rocket Lab launch to push out your album was a masterwork of like product launches, literally a launch. I mean, I was watching right along with you because I've been waiting for its business time for this whole year. Right. And so I'm watching your thing, and I knew from like Discord that you were putting out your album, and then like, for those who didn't see it, if you're watching, if you're listening, go check out Tim's video where he was streaming the Rocket Lab launch, because they got up into space, and then it was like, we're going to check out for a little bit, and then we'll come back when there's a new thing that happens. I don't remember what the deal was, but they're like, in the meantime, let's listen to this music from the Everyday Astronaut. And you're like, oh, whoa. And then you use that to like transition into, oh, by the way, I have an album of music coming out. And I was like, oh, that is... Like, for anybody who wants to know about like the background of YouTubing, and like that's just part of the business of it, is you have to put out, products and do that kind of thing. And there's an art to it. And that was like seeing Starry Night at the Louvre or something like that. Like that was like so well done. And I wanted to give you credit for that.
Thank you. I'm really sad that I wanted to have it out by then, like totally publicly available, but it did not work that smoothly on my end. As nothing ever does, but
well, it worked out.
Yeah. So I am back to actually getting that. Like Buran was this week, and Buran is one of those canceled things. So I could finish, I could use that snippet that I did and pop it into the thing. So I'm making progress. I got 2 other ones done. I'm on the last one, finishing scripting. I can't shoot this week because I'm going down to St. Louis with my family this weekend, but I will be shooting it next week and releasing it ASAP, because it's coming. Before you know it, it's coming.
I'll put that on the recommendations for Tesla buyers. Music by the Everyday Astronaut.
Album or the Buran? What?
The music by the Everyday Astronaut.
Hey, I didn't release. I do have a song where I use the autopilot chime, the boom boom.
Oh, nice.
I have a song that's based off that, but I didn't release that on this one. Maybe that'll be another one. Maybe I'll make one called Driving Time with the Everyday Astronaut. I don't know. Oh, well, is that it, guys? Number 10?
I think that's it. We did it.
All right. Well, as always, guys, leave us a little review and hit that, the like and tell a friend about us. And thanks you so much for the comments and for hanging out with us. And on the way out, you're going to be listening to some Everyday Astronaut music. So enjoy.
Until then, we'll see you
All right.
in our ludicrous future.
Ludicrous future. Bye, guys.